And we're live and recording. Thank you very much for working today, Zoom. I appreciate your love. This is SHB, Unfiltered, the podcast, Chris, the podcast. We're on. Technology tried to stop us just now, but yet again, I found a solution. And I will keep finding solutions. That's what I do. Chris, it's episode number what today? Number what?
Number 37.
37, which means we are on our 37th episode. 37 days in a row. 37 hours or a bit more. Constantly coming live on Facebook, live recording, podcasting platforms, showing ourselves, I think every day you can see our hair just slowly grow and grow and grow. God knows what it's going to look like by the end of this. But we are the only podcast running every single day featuring people who stutter, streaming live on Facebook, taking your questions and comments. So please keep hitting us up. My name's Ruben Pillai and Chris Jackson. And we've got a few things to talk about today. But before I hit record, Chris was telling me about his new podcast that he's running with his cousin, Chris Papacosta, called The People's Pundit. And Chris, how's it going?
It's going quite well so far. Just to clear things up, I'm at the moment, I'm not part of the host side of the podcast. I'm trying to learn the back end side properly, fully, and helping Chris to launch his podcast. I may feature at some point. If there's ever a Chelsea-Tottenham debate or something like that, I may get involved. But it's more for me to grow in terms of how to push a podcast, how to market a podcast, how to get people to interact with a podcast. But yeah, we've created 2 episodes that I recorded for Chris, and we've uploaded them, so they are available. So far so good. He's got a lot of interaction, a little bit of banter, a little bit of criticism, which is good when you're talking about opposing football teams to the one you support. So yeah, it's cool. But where was this going, Ruben? That's what
I was curious, as in how long were you gonna, or how often are you going to be posting a podcast episode with the People's Pundit, Chris Papacosta?
At the moment, we've posted 2 within a week, so we want to try to keep it to 2 or 3 in a week. But the structure of it is a little bit different. So what we're trying to do is get debates going. So the debate episodes will obviously be a bit longer than usual. We want to try to keep it to 15, 20 minutes when it's Chris on his own talking about Chelsea or discussing something around Chelsea alone. But when there's a debate, we're aiming for a little bit longer episodes. So we're looking to do 3, 1 debate and 2 shorter episodes a week at the moment.
Cool. And I think that kind of thing would be really good for if you manage to rope him into doing a live Q&A, because you can tell your mates and stuff before, and they will be pretty clued up about football and have their own opinions, and kind of put stuff out there. I do remember a talk. I forgot who it was actually. But they were talking about coaching culture, and so this was with a guy called Tom Bayer. So he oversaw a coaching revolution in Japan. This happened a long time ago now, maybe 10 years. But he launched an academy there. They were focusing around like doing basic fundamental skills, but going as far as starting with kids as soon as they start to walk comfortably, giving them a ball. And there's all these drills that you can do in your bedroom just to like build really good close control 360 skills. And all his academies were based on that type of development. And quite a few of the players from that pathway went into the Japan team. So they got to like final of the Olympics, semi-final 4 years later, and Kagawa came through that system as well. And so I actually went to a talk where he was doing a seminar and did a workshop as well. And one of the questions was like, how come you haven't implemented that kind of thing like in a European country? Now he said it's easier to do it kind of in countries where they don't really have like an established system, and it's easier to do it place like there and America because it's like a blank canvas. Now the good thing about a place like England is, yeah, so like everyone's got an opinion, so you're going to come. There'll be quite a bit of a skepticism. It'll be harder for people to take on your ideas, hence why it doesn't work as well here. But he loves a lot more here because everyone's an expert. Everyone you meet in the pub or in a coffee shop talking about football, everyone is expert in their own niche on the sport or their own team or any part of the sport. So that's what he loved about it. So I'm sure that Chris will get quite a lot of engagement from kind of like experts. But by that I mean just people around him who are pretty clued up. And yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. I can imagine him getting pretty heated.
Oh yeah, Chris will love that.
Yeah.
Chris loves it. Chris loves a good football debate. His favourite football debate is who's a bigger club, Chelsea or Arsenal. He can talk about that forever. Who is a bigger club, Chelsea or Arsenal? That debate won't ever end. But yeah, we're looking forward to making a few more, and we're just going to see how it goes. At the moment, we're enjoying the creative. I'm enjoying the creativity side of it. Chris is enjoying the presenting side of it. So we're rolling with it.
That's cool, man. And what kind of, I guess, skills have you learned from like your involvement with SHB Unfiltered? Because like you're probably more on the front end than back end here.
Yeah.
But then has that given you now a different perspective doing the back end for People's Pundit to kind of understand a bit more about how this whole thing works?
Yeah, but it's not only that, it's also, you've got me, I obviously have a stutter, so I spent my life avoiding speaking situations. Chris hasn't got a stutter, and Chris can talk for Britain, he can talk for the world. But it's crazy that I am part of this podcast, and yet I'm the one that is helping Chris with how to structure the podcast, how to lead conversations in a certain way. And these are things that I've picked up here from you and what you've done in Toastmasters. So these are the skills that I'm now transferring over there. I always wanted to learn the back end side. I always wanted to do that and grow in that way. But I'm very big on, there's no need to tread on anybody's toes. So because you had that on lock, there was no need for me to say, Ruben, I want to do this now because I want to learn. No, go and find your own opportunity to do it and try and implement it elsewhere. Learn from the ground up. Learn like you did, Ruben. Learn how you tried to implement a podcast last year, the traveling, the difficulties that you face. That's what we need to get experience in.
Thanks, Chris. It's great. But before we carry on, put your phone silent, mate. Put your phone silent. Someone who's creating a podcast and talking about it, to have his own phone go off, that's disgraceful, isn't it?
No, do you know what it is?
I think it's quite ironic as well.
No, do you know what happened there?
Go on, I'm sure you can tell me.
It wasn't my phone that rang. It was my phone that's linked to the computer that rang. And I don't know how to unlink it from my Mac. So it wasn't my actual mobile phone that rang. It was the computer that rang.
Cool.
So if it rings, it's my fault.
It's fine, don't worry. Maybe put it on airplane mode for a bit. Come on, Chris. or will your callers find a way to bypass that as well and call your computer? Whoever's calling Chris, stop calling him. He's on the podcast now. Stop it. You should be watching, not calling him.
I apologize. Let's move on.
Cool. One thing I was going to say, what you could do is there's different ways to structure podcasts, depending on your genre or length or however you want to do it. What you could do with his is you can start like, and then speak to him, but throw in kind of like different parts. So every episode he maybe mentions kind of best line of the week, where he pulls out something someone said in the press and then goes into that a bit. Reason why I said before I jumped on this, I was taking a look at BBC Sport and saw an article from them quoting Diogo Jota, Wolves and Portugal footballer. And have a guess what Diogo Jota says. Do you know what he says, Chris?
That he wants the league to be void?
No, he said, I believe the Premier League will be completed.
The complete opposite.
And I saw this and I'm thinking, first of all, yeah, who are you, man? Then, yeah, you can play a bit, but you got zero traction in the Premier League at the moment. You don't have the pulling power. Like, say if that came out of someone like Pogba, the papers would absolutely destroy this guy, innit? Absolutely destroy him. Greedy footballer. You still sit on the bench either way, so why does it matter to you? Blah, blah, blah. This guy just came up with some random line and they turned it into some kind of article, which is an example of where they're scraping a very thin barrel at the moment.
Yeah, it shows how much they're struggling for stories at the moment. You see it quite often, though. You see, like, a pundit that is an ex-footballer that's not a popular pundit at all, and it's like, okay, so-and-so said that Pogba may leave at the end of the season. It's like, but how do you know? You have nothing to do with Man United. You've probably never, ever met Pogba in your life, but they're just trying to claw a story from somewhere.
Yeah, they probably got that one from Rebecca Vardy or someone, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right. However, we got things to do, real stuff to talk about, actually, not Diogo Jota. However, today's topic of the episode is, I put in the title, but I didn't really know how to phrase it. I just put in toxic masculinity plus stuttering equals question mark. It isn't really like an equation that I want to solve in this episode, but I just wanted to maybe discuss the effects of toxic masculinity and how it can hinder or obstruct your progress and even make your stuttering work. Worse, not work, the opposite of work. But can toxic masculinity hinder and obstruct your progress to become a better speaker, if that's what you want to do? And I can kick it off just to give you a bit of a, some kind of direction. But this is the scenario, right? Someone approaches SHB for help with their speech. They come to you, Chris, and say, all right, Chris, I need help trying to get this job. I'm going to apply for jobs in a few months and speech isn't really good at the moment. I have loads of blocks and everything. And I want to really become a better speaker. Please help me out. Now you go through exercises and they respond, and then you kind of encourage them. Now it's important to disclose and tell people, like share on social media, then go into like kind of asking questions about intention and that kind of stuff. But they don't really want to open up, put a brave face, and kind of like, I wouldn't say like avoid telling, but downplay, because even if they have a bad experience, they don't fully explain the extent of it for you to actually help them. They're resistant to kind of doing disclosures because you get a lot of sympathy, but that's not really what you want if you are trying to put on like a tough exterior. And you aren't able to actually connect properly with your emotional side. But that emotional side is what is actually fueling the stuttering in the background. So with that information I've just shared with you, how do you approach that, and maybe discuss kind of your experiences yourself or people you've met who aren't able to actually progress because of that tough exterior persona that they have to present to everyone else. 3, 2, 1, go.
Yeah, that's a good scenario, and that would be challenging for any coach. But how I would address that is I would work out what are the things that they have issue with. So if we go back to what characteristics of toxic masculinity is, it's like you feel like you have to suffer in silence. You're not allowed to show emotion. You're not allowed to display that you're in pain. You don't want to depend on anyone. You are the man. You like don't do anything that could be seen as weakness. And what I would try to focus on there is I would try to focus on, in order to get to where you want to go with your speech, at this moment in time, you need to make a choice. If you do not want to depend on anybody else and you want to be this masculine person that you have in your mind, that you do not depend on anyone, you can do everything for yourself. You can order the food for you and your girlfriend at a restaurant. Because for me personally, that was my worst situation. I used to hate that. Sitting in a restaurant and the waiter comes over to the man, expecting the man to order. So he walks over to the table and usually he would look at me. And when I would avoid, and I would kind of look at Charlie, and then he would look at Charlie, and I know in his mind he's thinking, okay, this is a bit weird. Like the man's supposed to order the food. I would just frame it for him that if you want to do these things, then you have to implement these things. You have to get over that. You have to break that barrier because there is no other way. You have to put yourself in these vulnerable situations, these uncomfortable situations, and show your weaknesses and show your vulnerability in order to get strong and grow. And that is how I would frame it. I would have to reframe it like that. I would have to emphasize that everyone has their struggles that they're dealing with. Everybody has to work on stuff, and this is what we have to work on. And I would try to reframe it in a way that it is a positive, so you're chasing something positive than running away from pain and avoiding looking a certain way to certain people.
How would you explain? Kind of, but there is more. There is more that kind of you can go into, but I'm gonna try to like steer the conversation in that way with my next question or point. So how could you explain to that person or get the message over to them that actually opening up about your feelings, it isn't a sign of weakness. It isn't a non-masculine kind of characteristic, because the toxic masculinity, I'm sure you would have been pulling up some kind of definition by now, but it ties into Like, it's the hyper exaggeration of characteristics that go into what it means to be a man. And through time, you've seen an evolution of how society treats that, right? In the past, um, like, like think of it in school, for example, when you were growing up, was the intention to for boys to go to the gym and get big and get strong and get sideburns as soon as possible, get facial hair as soon as possible, and get a car, etc., and just get all these things that tick boxes of being a man. Now, since kind of you were at school and I was at school, I think that shifted slightly. I think I've seen, especially younger guys, are a bit more groomed. More groomed. Dude, like, how many people putting face marks on and all that kind of stuff? And I see it, and I don't really like judge and say, oh, that's feminine or whatever, but it is a shift from how it was before. And then even the whole the intention to go to the gym and to bulk up and just to eat loads of protein and just get big and big, even that isn't as popularized as it was before. Now it's a lot more about kind of the whole grooming and of yourself, and just being a bit more pristine, a bit more clean cut, as opposed to rugged, which is more of a traditional masculine type trait. Now, with stuttering, you can probably see now there's been a shift in that as well. So maybe people from the older generation, they struggle to actually understand what SHB does, and maybe some of these organizations where they're a bit more open about their speech. Because older generation are kind of more like, just they maybe find it easier to accept their situation and just put on a tough exterior and carry on because they got bullied at school. But for us, we aren't content with that. We want to go the extra mile and improve. Whereas I haven't seen that many, I guess, older people who've, if they've recently started to work on their speech, I haven't seen that many examples like that. And if I have, they are more the exception than the rule. Now, where I'm trying to get at this, because of like this generational shift, do you think that it could be easier to reach younger people who stutter because society is a bit more open to talking about vulnerabilities than it was before? And maybe this ties into the whole kind of acceptance problem, because the world isn't as aware or accepting of people who stutter. But people from the past just put on a tough exterior and didn't make a big deal out of it. And you know, and I know that if you don't make a big deal about something, if you don't make a big deal about something that affects you, then why would you expect other people to make a big deal about it? Now, do you think now it could be easier to reach younger people going into the job market than older people because of that type of mentality that you would assume that younger people are more likely to have?
When you say younger people, can you just clarify to me what age bracket are we talking about? Above 18, yeah?
I say above 18, but maybe more 20 to 24.
I think that not just stuttering specific, I think that mental health as a whole, and the more people that are able to express the issues that they've had and the struggles they've had like the most recent one for me, who I can see as being a real role model for people, is probably Tyson Fury. Someone like him, to admit the struggles that he had with depression, which you're talking about the heavyweight champion of the world here. You're talking about someone who has never lost a boxing match in his life. You're talking about someone who, for me, becoming a heavyweight champion of the world is like the ultimate thing, right? That is the ultimate masculine thing. So for someone like Tyson Fury to be able to come out and openly talk about the struggles he had with mental health and how he couldn't understand what was happening to him, and just how hard it was, and he wanted to end his life and all these different things. I think that situation like that, and him being on the platform that he is doing that, does make it easier for, or more accepting for, young people to realize, okay, I've actually experienced something similar to that. I actually feel a struggle that might not be exactly that, but is similar to that. If he's talking about it, perhaps I need to talk about it. If he's seeked help for it, perhaps I need to seek help for it. So I do think that because of things like that, it will make it easier. I don't think there's too much changed in a lot more awareness of stuttering has been achieved since I was younger, but I don't think it has changed too much. So I don't think it's going to have that much of that big a difference, if you understand what I'm saying. I think that other things like Tyson Fury talking about his mental health problems can allow stutterers to be more open about their stutter. I don't think that there's been too many role models like that in the stuttering community for people to be able to be as open as perhaps they would like. I know I struggled to be open and accept, and I struggled a lot around people that I knew close to me to use technique. That's where I struggled the most. So if you're struggling around them, then it only means that you're probably struggle more around people that you want to impress, people that you don't know that much. So I still think it will be a struggle. It perhaps will be easier, but I still think it's not that easy to get through to the 21-year-olds and stuff.
Yeah, that's a really, really good example that you brought out in there with Tyson Fury, because you would just assume that this guy is just badass, right? Just complete boss and kills it in every area of his life. But
do you know what, Ruben?
Mad, isn't it? Yeah.
Apologies to cut you off, but you've actually got in a ring and you've actually fought someone. So you understand the mental toughness you need to be able to do that.
So good. We're recording again. Unfortunately, the recording stopped at an inconvenient time. But just to remind you, Chris, you interrupted me before Zoom interrupted you.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that I had been in the ring, and I appreciate the mental toughness that goes into stepping in the ring. So I'll let you carry on.
Yeah, so you've actually been in the ring. You've actually fought someone else with the crowd watching you. So you know how much mental toughness you need to be able to get in the ring, the bravery you need to get in that ring. There's a good possibility you could get knocked out. There's a good possibility you could get seriously hurt. Tyson Fury knows the risks. Tyson Fury has fought on a big platform. He's challenged Klitschko in his own arena. He's gone there with the crowd really wanting him to lose, and he's gone and beat someone who's completely dominated the division for over 10 years, I think it was at the time. So we know he's got mental toughness, and he still struggled with mental health issues. So that's why it has to become acceptable for everyone to be able to do, because if Tyson Fury can openly express, and he is like the ultimate man, if you like, tougher than tough, heavyweight champion of the world, you know, he comes from a traveling background. You know what the stigma is for travelers. He obviously probably felt he had to live up to a certain type of character, reputation, had to live up to it. I think he's dad was a boxer, a really tough man, and he felt like he had to be the same. So there's all these different factors that he was dealing with, and he's able to come out and talk about it. And he's used his platform in a positive way to talk about it.
Yeah, he actually smashed it. Did you see his podcast with Joe Rogan as well?
No, I saw the podcast with Mike Tyson and the other guy. I don't know.
Yeah. That's a good one as well. That's a really, really good one. But the Rogan podcast was really good. I think that's when he first actually opened up about the mental health problems, the depression, the weight gain, and what he was getting up to. It's crazy how he bounced back from that. While you were speaking earlier, I actually Googled toxic masculinity. Something I should have done at the start of this, but I'm actually happier that we spoke a bit now. I've done it halfway because I feel we've ticked some of the boxes. But toxic masculinity is thus defined by adherence to traditional male gender roles that consequently stigmatize and limit the emotions boys and men may comfortably express while statusing other emotions such as anger. It essentially means just like putting away any sign of weakness and living up to what kind of a man should be. Now, when you gave that story about like it's the man's responsibility to order food or man's responsibility to do this, do that. But someone who stutters, when they are unable to fulfill those responsibilities, now what's the effect that can actually have for young men? Because this says this would kind of start to suppress emotions such as anger. So do you kind of create like a whole bunch of young angry men who are unable to live up to the idea of being a man, even if they could tick every other box and, like I said, go to the gym, eat loads of protein, get wench, become a heavyweight boxer of the world even, but still not be able to do certain things and maybe rely on their their girlfriends or wives, which isn't a bad thing. But for traditionalists, it could be a sign of them being a weakness because they would traditionally have to do certain roles and they would assume that the woman traditionally does the other roles, etc. It's very, very interesting. And I saw you shaking head a bit in agreement way, or were you disagreeing?
No, in an agreement way.
Cool. What was going through your mind?
Because that definition is pretty much saying that the only emotion that men should really show is anger. And I think that when you can't do the usual man roles like order food or order your girlfriend's drink at a bar, or you take a girl out and you want to order the drinks at the bar, or all these different things, it builds a level of frustration inside of you that is different league to anything you've experienced before. And what you do try and do is you try to do these other things to compensate, like go to the gym and get big muscles, learn how to fight, learn other things to try and compensate it. But at the end of the day, you can do all these things, but if you cannot do things that you really want to do, the other things are not really going to compensate at all. They're not even going to get anywhere near, because your level of frustration grows and grows and grows. And then inevitably, the only emotion that you do tend to show is anger. And I know I did. I used to be a very angry person because of the frustration. I used to get angry because I wanted a specific job. I knew I was smart enough to do a specific job. I knew I could get involved in that career and go right through that path, but my speech was stopping me from doing it. But it wasn't really my speech stopping me from doing it. It was me stopping me from doing it. But I used my speech as an excuse, or at the time probably didn't even realize I was using it as an excuse. But I didn't talk to no one about that because I didn't want people to think I was weak. I didn't want people to think that my stutter held me back. I wanted people to think, okay, CJ's got this stutter, but CJ lives with it. He doesn't care. So I used to live up to this, but I was still holding back in pretty much every aspect of my life. And I was doing other things to compensate it, to get away with doing the real thing that I wanted to do. So, yeah. I mean, have you ever experienced that, Ruben? Did you ever get angry? Did you ever get frustrated? Did you ever experience wanting to order the food at a restaurant and not being able to, and having to get your wife to do it? How did that work for you? Or did you just go for it anyway? Because I used to avoid it a lot. Avoidance was in me.
I think for me, it was more embarrassment at the time. Embarrassment, and it wasn't really anger, but I did feel anger kind of when I was by myself and left to actually dwell on things, because you start to dwell on if this happened, if I said it like this, then would led to that, and I started to dwell over potential scenarios that could have happened if things worked out. But in the moment, it was more embarrassment. But the anger was more of a kind of thing that happened afterwards. And it was always inside me, because you just feel that frustration. You can't satisfy certain basic things. And I'm actually kind of like thankful to anyone that I have, or like, I'm thankful that I found Thai boxing at that time, because it was a really good way to actually get out some of those emotions and empower me in a different way. So you start to like rebuild your masculinity up in that sense, because you become better, you're able to crack pads, get in the ring, etc. And you start to rebuild your self-esteem after it's been damaged by all these negative experiences through speech. And I know, like you said, it isn't the same, it's a substitute, but it does play a part. It does play a part, because it's better than not having anything at all. And I guess at some point, I hope that doing that kind of stuff would have actually addressed the speech. Now, it was only until I started working on my speech that it started to improve. But then when I went deeper in, I realized that all those things I learned in the past actually was ready, that it laid the foundations for me to actually excel. So it took me the best part of a decade to actually come to that realization, which is why I'm so motivated to actually coach, because that knowledge, that experience, trial and error, things I've done, mistakes, successes, challenges, experiences, I can help someone get to the place they want to within 2 years as opposed to 10 years. Now that's the excitement for me. That's the excitement, because 10 years ago, I could not have dreamed that I'd be where I am now. The ability to convey my ideas and thoughts and in like grand stages, like doing that now, that was a far distant dream for me all those years ago. And I'm sure there's thousands of people out there feeling the same right now. So it's up to us to actually get them to realize their dreams. But first of all, like, there's so many emotional hurdles to tackle, because until you do that, you can't actually start addressing speech, because all those things will just pull you back in, which is the problem, Chris. What kind of, I was going to ask, so what kind of like emotional barriers do you think you've come across with some of the people you've coached, maybe recently as well?
The emotional barriers is that they don't want to sound different to people that they consider to be normal, because they still find it embarrassing to show that they're working on their speech. They still have that embarrassment of themselves in them when they're advertising, as we call it, advertising, which is when we show the listener that we're working on our speech. And I feel like that is the most difficult. They like doing it when it's with us, but to get them to do that in their everyday life to everyone, which is the only way you make progress, that the embarrassment of that is what is the biggest emotional barrier that we have to help people get over, which is a tough one. And some people it takes long, other people it doesn't take too long, but there's no set time frame to help someone get over that. So you have to be persistent, you have to stick with it. And you as a coach, you have to expect that it will be different case by case. So that is the biggest one that I've experienced. Would you say that you've experienced the same, or is it others for you that have been more prominent?
Something else that I've experienced, but I was actually going to bring it up as kind of like a last question on this point. I really want to finish with a bang. Now, do you think that this kind of a toxic masculinity, where you kind of have to adhere to putting on some kind of persona, an exterior that isn't in line with the interior, manifests on some speech programs, and you don't feel comfortable actually expressing your troubles, your weaknesses, and where your true speech place is at that point? You instead are trying to put up a face in front of people within your stuttering community.
Yeah, because other people that you're looking up to are not being honest with you. Other people that you're looking up to are taking on that toxic masculinity role. Yeah, I've only had to come here once and now I'm fine. You can do the same thing. You know, so then when you go off into the wild, as I like to call it, you feel like you have to live up to the same thing, or you're weak now, or you don't work as hard, or you're not trying as hard, your effort ain't there. And that can be, it's in the name, that can be toxic. That can be toxic for your program. I mean, do you agree? Do you think I'm right? Do you think that has been shown? Have you heard of that?
Yeah. I do agree, and it can only limit your progress because you're unable to actually face up to the problem and address it. And if you are trying to put up a persona in front of people that you would perceive to be the most understanding because they are experiencing the same things as you, then you've got a massive problem, isn't it? Massive problem, because going back to the definition, like statusing other emotions such as anger. So you're gonna have all these frustrations and anger that you aren't able to realize and deal with because you can't make that first step and be honest with the people you call your close community. That's one of the reasons why I kind of I treasure the SHB attitude, because right from the top, there's a lot of transparency, working on your speech, troubles, just air them out. It's no secret that everyone at times struggles with their speech, even the two of us. And
100%.
we shouldn't be afraid of not sharing that, because we'd be lying to each other, first of all, if we thought anything different. And in the end, who are we trying to fool? Because there's so many pretenders out there, and they know who they are. Don't worry. And if you are watching this podcast, hope you're having a good evening. I'm just saying that for you to make your progress in your speech, not you, Chris, but you plural.
Yeah.
You should be able to open up to your community, like your coaches, your speech group, or whoever it is around you. Because if you don't, stuttering will get worse. I could go into technical breakdowns, whatever, but essentially stuttering will get worse, and that will affect your life, your mental health, your ability to fulfill basic responsibilities and roles. Because you've seen how empowering it is when someone comes back and says their biggest success is ordering something at the restaurant, like kind of ordering drinks or ordering something in a busy queue at Starbucks. These are basic things in the grand scheme of things, but it means so much to people who have a speech impediment. So much.
Yeah, but what can be frustrating is when you talk to them a year later and they really wanted to get help, but because of this persona they feel like they have to live up to, or because of these attributes they feel they need to have, they wouldn't ask for help. But yet they're struggling and struggling and struggling. So now a year later, what they were able to do in Starbucks, they now struggle to do. But they wouldn't have struggled if they were just open with a community, because we would have been able to help them nip it in the bud instantly. Well, and I say we, I'm not talking about SHB, I'm talking about the stuttering community as a whole, whichever program you're part of. It's just, I think that's where toxic masculinity comes into play, when things are not going your way. What type of person are you trying to live up to? Who are you trying to impress? Why are you trying to impress them? Why is that making you take on these characteristics and act a certain way when it isn't going to be beneficial for you? And going back to the original question, what would your challenge be coaching someone at 21? The biggest challenge will be to get them to understand that they might think it's masculinity, just masculinity, rather than toxic masculinity. So to get them to understand the difference between the two at that age will be the challenge. And that's why I think a lot of people, you can say a lot of people were able to take better control of their speech the older they get. And it could be due to more experience and understanding these characteristics more. But there are a lot of people that can understand them earlier, and that allows them to make a lot of progress.
Definitely. And there is a big benefit to being able to open up and actually kind of use stuttering as a vehicle to open up and show your vulnerabilities, because this can actually take your life to a different place and allow you to connect with people better, allow you to get more peace of mind and just be a lot more free thinking. And it all starts with being honest with yourself and the people around you. And if you can't do that, then find out how to quickly, I think.
Yeah, because
that's all I can say on the topic.
Yeah, it will improve all aspects of your life. It will improve relationships. It will improve your friendships. You will work out who your real friends are and who your real friends aren't. It will bring you closer to your real friends. It will bring you closer to your partner or your wife or your girlfriend if you open up to them and you explain to them what you're going through. You know, it puts people in a better position to be able to help you when you need help the most. How can you expect people to help you if you're not telling them what you're going through or what you need? You know, this is why it will improve all aspects of your life.
Definitely, completely agree. And I think that's a really strong way to finish this podcast on toxic masculinity. And it's actually taken us a while to get to this topic. We have mentioned aspects of it in the past, but this is very topical. Loads of things out there at the moment about male suicide and mental health with men and all this kind of stuff. I just have to say, it isn't. People sometimes get confused with masculinity and toxic masculinity and all this kind of stuff, but I'd probably deem toxic masculinity as things you can do that are kind of perceived to be masculine that actually are harming you and harming the people around you. And as soon as you can identify what those things are and just get them out of your life, then you can actually move on and progress. And we all deal with similar things, Chris. So it isn't us trying to preach, it's us discussing what we have experienced and want to relate back to stuttering, because it all links back to stuttering somehow, doesn't it?
Yeah, it all does. And we've all experienced times where we've felt the way I described, ordering food at a restaurant, and we've all had good speech, dropped off a little bit, and then had too much pride to go back and ask for help and struggled even more, which is toxic to your progress. So we've all been there, but this is our experience and this is what we've been through.
Chris, thank you very much. I have to go off now and actually put these two recordings together somehow. I've done it before, but it takes a long time because it's such a big file size and the export time is not good if you don't have that much time on your hands, but that's the price I paid for not watching the memory space when I kicked off the Zoom call. CJ, any last words before we wrap up number 37?
I think we've covered it all, Ruben. I think we've covered it.
As always, as always.
Thank you to everyone who tuned in. Appreciate it again.
It's all right, it's all right. We are steaming ahead, dude, steaming ahead.
That's it. Look forward to tomorrow.
Cool, thank you very much, Chris. Have a good Sunday evening. I'm going to shoot off, got some things to do. People see. Well, we're not much yet, but I'm going for a run actually as well.
Are you?
Yeah, so it should be good. Looking forward.
Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Yeah, the next 5 hours or whatever it is. But Chris, thank you very much as always, and to everyone out there bottling up emotions, please share it with someone and don't hold back.